WPTF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Good season overall, obviously not the result. The ultimate goal that we were looking to accomplish. I applaud the organization, all involved, the team, the players, the coaching staff, and we look forward to continuing to reach and strive for that ultimate goal of winning a world championship.
Has this team, under this leadership, maybe not Brandon Beane, but this head coach, reached its ceiling?
Mike Danger.
We, collectively, just have to be at peace with knowing that this team will be competitive, this team will contend for division titles, but this team won't get home. And if you're okay with that, Sean McDermott will be in Buffalo for a long, long time.
Gene Battaglia.
You mentioned how there's going to be some changes in the roster, and I agree with you on that, and we're wondering to what degree, but what is next for the Bills? Is it, hey, we're going back all in 2024? You know what? We got to be prudent here.
I think you can do a little bit of both. You make some moves, but you still have Josh Allen and a lot of talent. You're going to be in the mix. I don't ever see them with Josh Allen in the smack middle of his prime, taking a year off.
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
You didn't see that one, did you, Gino?
What?
Yeah.
Wait a second here.
Another blow for last season wasn't a failure if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Yeah.
They're 30-13.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the excuse now?
I don't know.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I was expecting like 3 hours of McDermott talk. Isn't this nice? Adrian Griffin fired by the Milwaukee Bucks right now.
We walk into the sports bar with breaking news that the Milwaukee Bucks
try that again.
Without even. Ow!
It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
Dude didn't even make it to the All-Star game.
The first year. How do you evaluate? Did he say something? Did he do something?
There has to be something behind that story.
Did he anger Giannis?
I mean, that's where my mind goes immediately. I don't like that my mind goes there, but immediately my mind goes there. My mind goes to there's a power play or a struggle. And this kind of sets the table for what we can talk about this afternoon in the sports bar.
Well, it's like, let's put this against the Buffalo Bills, too, because, for anybody that was holding out hope that today was going to have shocking news out of Buffalo, it was anything but. It's very predictable.
Business as usual.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what we heard today from head coach Sean McDermott, from general manager Brandon Beane, their end-of-season press conferences this morning and this afternoon. Let's set the table for you here in the sports bar. We'll talk some Amherst hockey as well. They're on a bit of a heater as their homestand continues this weekend, and head coach Seth Appert stops by at 4:25.
Yeah, if you're down about the Bills, all right, well, here's a little bit of an anecdote for you. That the Amherst are, they're playing their best hockey this season. They will have a veteran goalie here for the Post, or maybe they go with Levi when you're going down the stretch. We shall see, but for now, again, the switch has been made. Comrie coming back down, Levi going back up as the Sabres are out west. We'll talk to Amherst head coach Seth Appert because, here's another thing, too. If you're looking for something to do, the Amherst are home Friday night and Saturday night. Doesn't happen too often. You get them on back-to-back nights.
We'll have Matt Perino join us here later this hour covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. He was in Orchard Park today for the McDermott and Beane press conferences. We'll get his takeaways after the Bills season comes to an end on Sunday night.
Yeah, so what's next? I mean, Matt has covered the team here. He's very embedded. We'll get his thoughts here, and he'll deliver this straight to you. He is one of the best. We're lucky to have him on every week. Matt Perino, the Shout Podcast, Syracuse.com, Syracuse Post-Standard. He'll be joining us here shortly.
Your calls are always welcome in the sports bar. Love hearing from you on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. That's 866-4FAN, 585-866 4326. You can also reach out to us on Elon's Twitter. That's X, at the Fan Rochester. I'm at AKA Mike Danger. He is at Gene Battaglia. So yeah, it's funny. You get this news of the Bucks firing their first-year head coach in Adrian Griffin, and what their plan is, who knows? But chances are they're going to bring in somebody with a little bit more experience, maybe a more veteran head coach, and they're in a position where they're going to be a postseason team. They're going to make a run for the title like they do because they have some of the best players in the world on their team, but they're not satisfied or they're not resting on their laurels. And if they feel like there's a chance for an upgrade, they're going to take that chance. Now, the NBA is not the NFL. Basketball players and football players, although all elite athletes, they're different breeds of cat, right? I mean, I'm not completely comparing apples to apples, but what you got today out of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane is what you've gotten out of them at the end of every postseason press conference. Nothing different, nothing to speak of that was like shocking. Not that you would expect anything shocking, but it's the same steady drumbeat that we've heard.
Yeah, and let me draw an analogy that I think is relatable for a lot of us. You get to a certain age and you start thinking, all right, I got a plan for my future. Like, what about retirement, financial planner? And the majority of financial planners will beat the same drum that we are built for all market conditions. We are going to do this. We are going to do that. And they almost lull you to sleep. And why do they do that? Because, well, if there's a dip or if they lost some money, they're telling you in advance, hey, there's a chance here. Like, that's what basically this duo has been doing, except the difference being here is that, well, we're not talking about retirement in 20, 30 years. We're talking about, can this team get over the finish line? So the ultimate decision maker, it's not Brandon Beane. It's Mr. Pegula. Mm-hmm. What does Mr. Pegula think? And this is kind of the line that his two main employees keep feeding him, and that's why you're not going to see any change. Hey, listen, we are built here for the long term. We don't need anything. We just need a tweak here or there, and everything is going to be just fine. We are going to get this done. I will listen. I will entertain your argument that this team needs a head coaching change. I will. Because we said this at the beginning of last year. We talked about it with Matty Gray. It's all there in audio. What is it going to take for this team to get over the hump? And I'm saying this. Listen, our shows that say, no, it's not a hump. It is a hump. You get to the certain point of the season. This roster is good enough to get back to the postseason next year. And when we get to that point once again, what's going to happen? We're all going to be nervous. How do you get over that hump?
You're going to get beat by better coaches, and you're going to get beat by a more talented roster. That's on the head coach and the general manager, who we both heard from today. And as far as the ultimate decision maker, the guy that's signing the checks, well, he's supportive of what they've done. Why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, very, very supportive. We have great lines of communication with Terry, and he's disappointed like we are. But he's just very supportive, and he understands how hard it is to try and get to that ultimate goal. And so I couldn't ask for a better owner.
Have you felt any shift in, for lack of a better term, approval rating with him?
Not to my knowledge, no. And that's a question for him. But
yeah, can we ask him that question? Oh, no, we can't ask him that question because he's never around.
Was that our guy?
I think that was Perino.
Yeah, it was Perino.
Yeah, look, I think that you have an owner who, when it's all said and done, can look at this organization and say, we're successful. We hosted 2 playoff games last year. We hosted 2 playoff games this year. We found money in the bank. This is great, you guys. I mean, yeah, of course we want to win the Super Bowl. That would be great. But, I mean, winning secondary to just being a business that you can be proud of, a business that rakes in what they rake in?
The divisional round game between the Chiefs and the Bills, CBS touting most watch ever in terms of number of viewers, peaking over 56. Peaking at 56.
Oh,
that is
insane.
Remarkable. Put this in perspective. The Bills are a national team. They're a national team. And these are the men who helped build this. So where you, the fan, wants a championship, and how are we going to get to that championship? Take a look from the owner's eyes. They're making money. New stadium's going up. What's the problem here? Where's the paying?
Mission accomplished.
You, the fan, you felt this way last year. And you know what happens in the NFL? Time.
Yeah.
You know, look, here's a little bit of hope. The sun will come up.
The season of optimism begins once free agency opens up. And make a couple of signings, and you make a few moves, and you start talking about the exciting new players that you could draft at the end of April. By the time we get to St. John Fisher University, we've ramped up. We are in full-blown optimistic. this is our year mode. It's the cycle. It continues. Nothing changes unless it changes. I think the Bills have some very, very important decisions to make this year, but I think you can distill it down to one of two choices. Do you want to continue to build this team around your head coach, or do you want to build this team around your superstar, elite level talent quarterback? That's it. For me, those are the two choices. You're either going to go one direction, or that you could try to satisfy both, but by leaning too far in one direction, you sacrifice the other direction. By investing as heavily in a failure of a defensive line as they have, they've hurt what they can do on the offensive side of the ball. They've limited the amount of weapons they can give. Just by investing in some of the weapons that they've invested on the offensive side of the ball, they haven't. So we learned that Josh Allen has a lot of influence in terms of picking who the offensive coordinator is. I mean, he vouched for Ken Dorsey. He's once again endorsing Joe Brady, and Joe Brady will likely become the Bills' next offensive coordinator. But so what? So what? Sean McDermott ultimately is the one that's going to move on.
Sean McDermott also, if it's Brady, can put his fingerprint right on it and say, look, this is what we need to do against Kansas City. We need to control the ball. And
yeah.
Like 8 possessions, that's a factor in that game, Danger.
It's funny, though. I actually think it was one of the things that I heard McDermott talk about during his press conference today, that he actually, being a guy who cut his teeth around Andy Reid, is a pass-first guy, especially with Josh Allen at quarterback. The idea that, he's a defensive-minded head coach and they want to play this certain brand of football, he's been pretty steadfast in his messaging that, we want to be able to run the football when it's necessary, but we want to win games by passing the football. I actually kind of buy into McDermott when he says that, but I also believe that behind closed doors, when your defense is as banged up as his defense was, we need to hold on to the ball, and we need to hold on to the ball a lot against this team because our defense isn't going to be able to stop them.
I want to go back to the breaking news of the top of the hour. You're just getting in your car, not from the NFL, from the NBA, and it's just like, holy cow, you put this story against the Bills story. The Milwaukee Bucks fired their first-year head coach, Adrian Griffin. To review, they won the World Championship in 2021. Mike Budenholzer, Coach of the Year next year. Flamed out, first round. Number 1 seed, losing to Miami. Hey, everything's fine. You're fired.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the standard here in Milwaukee. Now, why was he? I suppose we'll kind of learn, but now put that next to what the Buffalo. I didn't think we'd be comparing the Bills to the Milwaukee Bucks today. Joining us on the show, one of our longtime guys. He was with us day one. LeBaron joining us in the sports bar.
LeBaron, thanks for joining us, buddy. How are you?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good.
So, with the lies of McDermott, you already know this was going to happen with their offseason. I feel like they're going to run it back with the same washed-up guys. They're going to get to the draft, pick some 5'9" receiver from Bemidji State that runs a 6'4" and a 40, and say he's a character guy. And then they're going to pull up someone from, the Texans' number 5 receiver and say he's the next big thing. That's what's literally going to happen. And the Bills are screwed. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
I like how he pulled Bemidji State. Do you take offense to that?
Bemidji, yeah.
Bemidji.
Yeah. Bemidji State. He's talking specifically about Gunnar Olszewski. If Gunnar Olszewski is on this Bill's roster come training camp, LeBaron is a psychic.
How many teams has he been on? The Patriots, the Steelers, the Giants?
He's bounced. Yeah, he's bounced around a bit.
I get your point, LeBaron. And I can't fight it. This team does need the weapons, and this team does need a receiver. This team needs to draft their future number 1 wide receiver.
Well, I'm on board that, and I agree. I think what they will do versus what they should do are two different things. And again, I'll go back to what I said, and I'm going to add a little bit more to it here. I think the Bills have a decision to make this offseason. Do they continue, because this is what they've done up to this point, do they continue to build around their head coach, or do they decide to start building around their superstar quarterback? And the quarterback needs to be a part of this as well. You're giving him you're giving him some weight in terms of some of the decisions you make with your coaching staff. If I'm Josh Allen and you're the quote-unquote alpha dog that everybody talks about, this guy that when he's on the field, he's as competitive as anybody out there. We see it. We know it. And that is a fact. But off the field, does he carry that same weight? Does he still have that alpha dog mentality? Because if he does, then you see him going into Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott at the end of the year and saying, I don't have enough. But I don't think that Josh Allen has that in his off-field personality. He might be the most competitive guy on the field every single weekend. Off the field, he's golden retriever. Wagging his tail, chasing after the ball, doing what good golden retrievers do.
Yeah, which is what their coach wants you to do.
And Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott had to have known that personality saves them from inward criticism. The idea that Steph Diggs has that, challenged that last offseason, and was sent home for a day of minicamp because of that, tells you really all you need to know.
Well, again, we don't have the full story on Diggs to kind of piece that together, but and Alan, what you're saying, and I hear this, what would really upset the apple cart? What if Alan one day decided to go on McAfee and say, you know what, this ends, it's going to change, I need more help, he can exert that power. Josh Allen is the second most powerful person in the Bills organization. It's not Brandon Beane. It's not Sean McDermott. If there were ever a power play, you can't find these quarterbacks. But that's not in his DNA, Danger. It's just not. Can you make somebody do that where it's out of their realm? Josh, it kind of strikes me as the guy who is fun to be with and wants to be liked and everything. And when you look at the great quarterbacks, your Brady's, your Mannings, Jim Kelly,
they put it on the table.
They have an a-hole streak.
Yes. And they put it on the table, Gino. They just put it on the table and say, mine is bigger than yours. And this is why we need to do this, because we're not going to win. Do you think Peyton Manning was quiet and just nodded his head as they were getting bounced in the postseason by New England? Do you think Tom Brady was satisfied anytime they got bounced? Saying what they say is cliche at this point. We've heard it. They know it's cliche. They're so comfortable saying what they say that they're not even going off script anymore. They know exactly how to answer every question, and it's the same thing we hear year in and year. Losing sucks. We're proud, but we're not satisfied. We're going to get better. We're going to come back, and we're going to be better next year. And it starts now. And fine, but if you're Josh Allen and you're the alpha that everybody says you are on the field, we see it. You need to have some of that off the field as well. Go in there, put it on the table, and say, you know what, guys? I don't want this anymore. We need to get back past them, and we need to stop whatever we're doing and focus our attention on getting me the weapons that I need, making sure that we collectively will outscore Kansas City anytime we have to face them or any other opponent that is in our way.
Interesting listening to Brownie and Tasker today with Orlovsky, who they had on every week during the season. Brownie a couple times bringing up the 3 drop passes. I'm just wondering, if somewhere in that building, Danger, that's the internal narrative there. That, you know what, it's not the linebackers, it's not this.
There's a part of me as I was listening to Brandon Beane today that believes that they're setting this up, that they're going to set up Steph Diggs. To hear him say Steph Diggs is a number 1 receiver and hear him prop up Steph Diggs the way he did, even though we all saw with our own eyes kind of Steph Diggs trail off here at the end of the season.
And why did he trail off? We don't know. We can make assumptions. Yeah. Where are you going with this, bud?
I think there's a chance. There's a real chance that the Bills could part ways with Steph Diggs. And to go back with what we said about what I said about the Bills will do versus what they should do, what they should do is draft an alpha wide receiver in the first round whoever's there, whoever you can get, even if I don't know that you need to trade up because we need players. You're going to get a comp pick. You're going to get a third-round comp pick. We've kind of worked out that formula, and we know that at some point you're going to get that.
But remember,
that third that you gave up, you're getting back. What they should do is get a wide receiver, somebody with those hands, somebody that isn't going to drop the ball, somebody that can step in and really be the one for this offense that Steph Diggs is kind of like falling off of. Even if Brandon Beane is saying he's a one, he's not a one anymore, right? I mean, like at the beginning of the season, yes, what we saw towards the tail end for whatever reason didn't look like it. Maybe that changes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is here next season.
But the cap, Mike Danger. Well, yeah, that's real. But remember, you can kind of shift half of that, the way I understand it, into next year with a trade. I guess it's one of those takes where at first I'm like, no. And then you think about it, I'm like, well, how many more years do you get Steph Diggs? You can't even say one definitively. What would be the market, though, for Steph Diggs? That's the problem, Danger. It really is. Like, who's going to offer a number one pick for Steph Diggs?
I don't think you're getting that, but you could get somebody who would want something. There are teams out there that need that kind of player on their roster.
Would Jerry Jones give you a second round pick?
Yeah, I don't know that Jerry Jones is one of those teams that's in need of that. What team would need somebody like a Steph Diggs?
Well, you're narrowing it because you can't really send it to... You don't want Diggs in the AFC. Can we agree on that?
No, you send him to the NFC South. Why can't the pipeline work in reverse? Carolina could use a number one wide receiver.
Oh, my gosh. That'd be doing the player wrong, though, send him to there.
You think Sean McDermott cares about how Steph Diggs feels about his next team?
What about...
After what happened last offseason? You don't think you think he's forgotten that?
What about Diggs with the Rams, with those two other receivers?
Yeah,
they're destinations.
There are teams. Yeah. There are teams. I don't know what they would give up. And I don't even when I heard Brandon Beane talk Steph Diggs up, I'm like, this is Brandon Beane setting the table for, and good. If you're Brandon Beane, you have to explore everything, every option. And if you're Terry Pegula, you should do the same thing. We know he's not, but you should do the same thing. You should evaluate. If you're supporting Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, it's because you're up to your armpits in cash and you're satiated and you're totally fine with where the state of this organization and where you are.
Like the Donald Duck character.
That's right. You're Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah.
You're just there counting your millions. Guys, everything's good. Don't worry about it. Well, I mean, of course, I'm disappointed, but we'll manage through. And if you're Josh Allen, I know that this isn't his personality, but you need it to be his personality because otherwise it's not going to change. It's never going to change. It's just going to be what it's been. It's going to continue to be what it's been. He can only take you so far. This head coach can only take you so far. It's my belief. I'm not calling for him to be fired. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should know going into next season what the ceiling is for this team, and it isn't the Super Bowl.
The Jack Del Rio comp scares me. You're number 8 core head coaches in the AFC. You look at the list that haven't gotten to the Super Bowl. Del Rio got 8 years. Marvin Lewis got 13.
Yeah.
At what point, at what year do you say, you know what, we really should rethink this?
Yeah. Maybe never. We'll see. Matt Perino covers the team for the Syracuse Post-Standard. He was there at both press conferences today. We'll get his take on not just the game on Sunday night, but also the words of these two men from earlier today. Matt Perino joins us next, and we also have time for your calls on the other side at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Sports Update.
2023 season comes to a close for the Buffalo Bills. The annual State of the Bills press conference is today. General Manager Brandon Beane on what his top priority is.
Top priorities would be build this roster with as many good players as we can, and that's my number one job. Is we have to use every asset, everything we can. Obviously, I'm going to have to be creative with the cap.
Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard, and the Shout podcast joining us next year in the Sports Bar. A couple of breaking news items here. Tom Telesco is the new general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders. Shocker from the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks firing their head coach Adrian Griffin, who's in his first season. The Bucks tied for the second best record in the NBA this season at 30-13. Sabres After Dark, 10 o'clock tonight there in Anaheim. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I'm extremely proud of what we've accomplished, but not in any way satisfied or going to get complacent with where we're at. Every year you start over, and every year that fire, I can tell you and promise you, that fire burns within me as bright as it did the year before, if not more so. So, we're disappointed, yes, but not broken.
Bills head coach Sean McDermott at his end-of-season press conference earlier today, attended by Matt Perino, our next guest, covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. And Matt, I appreciate everything that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane said today. And I guess I'll ask you, in your opinion, is this season a failure for the Buffalo Bills?
That's a great question. And I think probably one that we can do a whole podcast on, like the merits of what Sean McDermott talked a lot about today, and that is 6 playoff appearances in the 7 seasons that he's been here. And I think in the moment, in all of these seasons, in the immediacy of the losses, it's natural to be unhappy with their inability to get over this proverbial hump. And you kind of get yourself removed from the fact, like, okay, I don't really care as much about the 6 playoff appearances in 7 seasons because it keeps ending in the same thing. But at the same time, as somebody that lived through the drought, from a fan's perspective, I feel like I have that unique vision into what it feels like to finally have what this regime has brought, which is a lot of success. I do agree with Sean in that assessment. But what is ultimately going to be the moves or the shift that leads them to winning a championship? Because it does feel like they're in the same spot that they've been at the last couple of years without incrementally moving in a direction that I feel puts them in any kind of different place. And if anything, now heading into this offseason, you're in a place where the job for Brandon Beane is going to be tougher than it's ever been because of how much they're paying their quarterback, with how many proven players on their roster they're potentially going to lose. And so is the season a failure? I don't know. I stopped short of saying that, but I do feel like there's elements of the result that feel like a failure.
Matt Perino joining us. He was out in Buffalo today at Orchard Park, I should say, and as well as the game. You brought up these moves and all these free agents, Matt. In your time covering the team, because of the cap situation, because of the number of free agents, should we expect for the most roster turnover here in the Sean McDermott era?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think you could be looking at, maybe 4, I got to look at it a little closer, but 4 new starters on defense next year, depending on what happens with Daquan Jones. You have Leonard Floyd, who's a free agent, both of your safeties, and then do you want to bring in competition for some other spots? I mean, that is something that I think Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are going to have to figure out. On the offensive side, you're going to have probably a new starting wide receiver opposite Stephon Diggs, depending on the market that materializes for Gabriel Davis. And, I think Davis is this mercurial, like polarizing figure that, like, for all intents and purposes, had a really good run in Buffalo these last 4 years. But I almost feel like it feels like they need to go in a different direction. And you look around the league at some of the really fun young offenses. Like, I think of Detroit. I think of Houston. And what do those offenses have that the Bills don't? And I think, like, that young, speedy, like, multi-purpose wide receiver that you can make an argument for in their schemes is the number one receiver. Amon St. Brown in Detroit, Tank Dell when he was healthy in Houston. Like, to me, that's the next iteration of this offense, is finding that player that you can put in this offense that could be a complementary piece to Khalil Shakir and Stephon Diggs as Diggs now goes into that next iteration of his career. Like, do I think Stephon Diggs is still a number one wide receiver in the league? I don't know. I've never been closer to saying that he's not. At the same time, not willing to say that he's not. And Brandon Beane says that he is.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to treat him as such. But I think you go out this offseason and you bring in whoever's going to be his replacement is, whether it be in the draft, which is where I think they should look, and then also figure out what that role now looks like in maybe a transitional year with Diggs, because the contract is just too rich to get out of it.
So I'm glad you brought up Diggs. And I want to talk about what the Bills will do versus what they should do, and what we all think they should do versus what they probably actually will do. But Brandon Beane's comments on Steph Diggs stuck with me, and they almost came off to me as if it was the GM pumping up the tires of an asset that he might be looking to find something for. If you're evaluating everything, that's got to be a part of it. And Diggs, to his credit, all season long was a great teammate. Everything they say about Diggs is true, but we don't know how bad it was in the offseason during the minicamp when Diggs was sent home. We don't know what he said to Beane and McDermott and what led to this kind of downturn in production here the second half of the season. Long way of asking the question, is Steph Diggs on this roster come training camp?
I will say yes, and the reason I say yes is because I don't know if this is a better team just at the bare minimum with Diggs off the roster, because you're basically going to take that astronomical hit, whether you do it pre-June 1st or post-June 1st, just to have a guy off the roster. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. Like, I don't know if this offense is necessarily better if you're, going to trade him and, get a draft asset, and that way you can kind of bring in a bunch of, young rookie players and kind of build that way. Like, I think the model is set. Like, Green Bay has done that. They did it with Jordan Love, and it worked out well. Now, they didn't have a huge dead cap hit that they had to eat on the other side of Devontae Adams, but there's a world you can live in where you go in a completely different direction and somehow find a more productive offense. So if you think you can attain that, then sure, maybe think about it. Especially if, to your point, it's been more of a headache than even anybody's been willing to lead on, and which that's natural. We're never going to probably learn, maybe until 2 or 3 years after Diggs is gone, what really went on and how bad it was at its worst. But I still think that Stephon Diggs is an elite player in this league, so I think having him back makes a lot of sense, but that's without knowing the depths at how bad it potentially is. You might be able to convince me that it's addition by subtraction.
Right.
If it's so bad in the room that it would just be better to just flush it and then bring in new players.
So, Matt, and that was the second part of where I was going to go with this, because it really felt like down the back half of the season when they were on this stretch of wins and they found themselves as the 2 seed, that they did it despite Diggs' lack of production. Like, they won these games with Steph Diggs essentially being invisible. You can get that production elsewhere.
Right. Everybody I've talked to, from Josh Allen to Khalil Shakir to Gabe Davis, will scream from the rooftops that a lot of that production comes because Diggs is still on the field. Like, he's not a guy that teams aren't planning for to stop. Even if it just draws the attention of L'Jarius Sneed. What happens in a world where a young receiver has got to take that matchup, and is Khalil Shakir as productive? Is Dalton Kincaid as productive? I don't know. That's a great question, a great topic to discuss. I still do think we live in a world, and I've always thought that the natural progression for Diggs was to being this elite slot receiver at the end stage of his career, because of the suddenness that he has as a route runner, the football IQ and the way that he works against defensive backs, the way that he sets them up. Like, to me, he would be like Cole Beasley, +2, right? Like, I feel like he'd be a better version of that. But it's got to work, like, personality-wise, and I just don't know how bad that situation is. I will say this, like, being in the locker room all year, I don't want to put it out there that there's any type of rift between Allen and Diggs. We've gone through that. Allen has called him his brother the other day. He's denied all of it. But it's amazing how, like, little you see them interact, like, in the room, like, behind closed doors. They do during the practice. Like, they're dancing with each other. They're talking with each other. But away from everything, like, you just don't see them interact a ton. So I don't know. Like, maybe that's a conversation for the offseason with Bean, McDermott, whoever the OC is, and Josh Allen. But I still expect him to be here next year.
Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post Standard, our guest here in the Sports Bar. Matt, look, Bills fans, and you can make it an argument, like, go get your future number one wide receiver in the draft. And, well, I think there's going to be another glaring need on this team. And listening to Micah Hyde yesterday, that sounded like a guy who realizes that one of the options for him might be just to kind of hang it up here. And even if he were to decide to come back, I don't know if the Bills would bring him back as he's an unrestricted free agent. Poyer and Hyde. And the other end of this, Jordan Poyer, where, yeah, he came up with a big play, but I don't know. Like, the concern I have here, Matt, is that I'm not sure if you have your future safeties on this roster right now in terms of a next man up.
Right, but I don't necessarily know if you need to spend a premium asset to try to find one. Like, I mean, where did they get these two guys to begin with? I mean, they were free agents, lower-end free agents that, they weren't on the radar of a lot of teams, and they had a vision. So I think that's the one area that, I think Sean McDermott can find value in players that can play those positions without having to, like, I've seen some mock drafts with safety in the first round. I would be absolutely stunned if the Bills went first-round safety, especially knowing that they do have to find the heir apparent to Stephon Diggs, and I think they just need to start spending those premium assets at the wide receiver position, knowing that you have Josh Allen, who still has a number of years left in his prime. That would be shocking. I think they'll look in free agency. I think that they'll look in the draft and maybe even some UDFA guys. I think Tyler Rapp could be in the mix to come back next year, and I thought towards the end of the season, before he got hurt, he got much more comfortable. So I think there'll be options, and I just don't know if those positions are as vital as, what I think they're probably going to have to draft an edge rusher, guys. Yeah. I mean, A.J. Epinesa, Floyd, Shaq Lawson, all those guys, vital parts of their rotation, likely are going to be gone. And so, and do you even want to bring back Shaq Lawson? Like, he's been a really nice, reliable player for them, but I think you can even upgrade that player, especially knowing that they didn't get much from any of those guys against the Chiefs.
That's right. And Matt, that's exactly where I was going next. Gene's talking about the third level of the defense. I'm talking about up front, that defensive line that they've invested so much in over the course of the Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane era to get the kind of result that they got on Sunday night. Is you can't look at it as anything but a failure, from how much you're paying Von Miller to, look, Ed Oliver, best season of his career, but you still need more, and you need him to show up when it matters most, and they were invisible on Sunday night.
Invisible, and it's indefensible, because we sat there with Sean and Brandon last year after the Bengals game, and they both talked about the inability up front. And they go out and they bring in Floyd, and I thought it was a great signing. He was great in the regular season, the best regular season for an edge rusher they've had almost in their entire tenure. And so that's a plus, but you can have the wheels fall off in the playoffs in the same exact way when, to your point, you spent all these resources. Like, where's the pressure on Eric Washington? I mean, Sean was complimentary of him today. Like, I think he has to be the one held accountable for the lack of production in that room when you're spending that kind of money. And, oh, by the way, you're going to be forced to run it back with Von Miller, who I know that Brandon and Sean, with all due respect to them, wanted to play it off like this was the best game that Miller's had. I would disagree. Like, he might have done some good things in the run game, but who cares? They ran it against them down the stretch in that game. And he was completely invisible as a pass rusher. And you get 9 months to see if his knee can, recover, and you can get some semblance of the player that he was before. But there's other questions about the guy too. Like, I know that Brandon Beane kind of said that they still feel comfortable about everything that happened off the field with him a couple months ago, but I don't think we still have all the information when it comes to that. And I thought it was pretty telling that Von Miller didn't talk after the game. He was one of the first guys out of the locker room, and then told reporters yesterday that he'd get us in a moment, and before we could even turn our head, he had gathered his stuff and kind of scurried out the back door of the locker room and left and never talked to reporters. That's a team captain. That's a guy making $20 million per season, and now you're going to run it back with him as your number 2 edge rusher because I probably slot him in behind Greg Rousseau. They're in a bad spot there. And if they don't bring back Daquan Jones and they can't spend on the free agent market, you're going to be depending on a very rookie-laden defensive line. You better hit on the offensive additions because it's going to be all on Josh Allen next year.
Are there 3 options with Von Miller or only 2? Option 1, I think we all see, run it back and say all the nice things. Option 2, that would seem like a bigger, prayer than fumbling out of the end zone as Hardman did. Option 3, Matt, is this. Would you actually bite the bullet and say, you know what, for the betterment of the team, we're going to take maybe a half step back. We got to take this cap hit. He's taking up a roster spot that is not worthy here. We're going to move on, and it's going to be really ugly for the cap this year.
I mean, I think that decision would only come post June 1st if you see things in OTAs that you're just not seeing the same burst. But even then, I still think that they are going to be hard pressed. If you could even get 70% of the version that he was before, I still think you'd rather have that if you're comfortable with everything off the field than you would just cutting bait and paying him anyway. And then, not having a guy the one thing you could say about Von Miller, he's played a lot of football in this league. If he can get back to some type of more consistent level of play just as a pass rusher, I think you'll want that. But yeah, it's almost like a lose-lose situation unless he finds some bit of his former ability, which I don't know if you can count on at this stage.
Matt, we talk a lot about how Josh Allen, and he gets painted with broad strokes, but he's an alpha dog. He's more competitive than anybody else on the field. He has respect of his teammates. He has respect of his opponents. He's playing lights out, and he really, was the best player on the field on Sunday night. Can some of that transition into his personality off the field? Because I think that there's a killer instinct that guys like Brady and Manning, the elite guys, have off the field, that they expect more. And we heard Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane talk about, Josh having insight and input into who they hire as the offensive coordinator. That's all fine and good, but if it goes south, the head coach is still going to fire the offensive coordinator without consulting the quarterback who had his endorsement on it. Can Josh Allen be a little bit more of that alpha off the field and help shape and mold some of the decisions that they have to make here this offseason?
This is such an interesting conversation because, the big takeaway from, 6 seasons now of Josh Allen is that he's one of the guys, right? I think that's why guys love him so much and play for him so much is because he's so relatable. It's so easy to talk to him. It's not like that with every quarterback. I mean, great quarterbacks around the league. But I think Patrick Mahomes is that way too. But we saw even this year him growing a little bit into that, all right, I'm going to have to be a little bit more assertive when things aren't going well and hold guys accountable. And I don't know how comfortable Josh is in that role. I don't know how much that is in his personality. It felt like Tom just, Peyton always felt like that. I mean, you remember the Jeff Saturday exchange on the sideline. I don't know what point of his career that was, but that always felt like Peyton. And it's funny because I was thinking back to, the mic'd up segments that they put out every week. There was a recent one where you can hear Dawson Knox in the background and him yell out right before they go, "Dad!" Like they always do that joke, right? Like the dad joke. He's got to be like the dad, I think, at some point, and be a little bit more aggressive. And we've seen it at times, but I don't think we've ever seen it in like an authoritative role, and I don't know if that's in his bag. But to your point, I think he's got to find a way to get it into his bag. And this might even go into the Diggs conversation, and maybe that might be motivation to move on from Diggs, because maybe that's why he can't have that. Because when you have another alpha in the room, or an alpha like Diggs, who, to your earlier point, is somebody that everybody respects as a leader, it might be hard for Josh to fully own that huddle when you have another guy that everybody looks to, even offensive linemen, as that leader. So I think that's a good observation, and something that I wonder if that's something that they talk to him about.
Matt, last one for me, and I feel like I could talk to you for like another hour, but is there anything we haven't asked you yet? Like, for your takeaways from what happened Sunday night, or your takeaways from locker cleanout day, or what was said today here?
Something that a lot of Bills fans have pushed back on me with over the last couple of days was my comments about Josh Allen after the game. I think it was a failure to understand my point more than anything. Like, Josh Allen, to me, in that game, is the last person that should get blamed for the loss, right? But if we separate that part of it, right, of course, Josh was the best player arguably on the field that day. But what happened at the end of the day? He lost the game. And when we talk about elite players, like the best players in sports, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, we talk about them elevating their teams in the biggest moments. And I think when you look back at that game in 5 years, you're going to look back and say, and who knows, maybe the story will get rewritten because he's got so many more years to go, and maybe they get over the hump. Maybe he wins a Super Bowl. Peyton Manning didn't win his first till he was 30. But in that game, when I look back at the season, I'm going to think, man, what if Josh Allen gets him into the end zone? He was so close. Stephon Diggs could have caught that pass. A bunch of different things could have happened. He could have seen some underneath stuff. They could have had a fourth and manageable and gone for it. But in the end, he didn't get it done on that drive. And those are the legacy-building moments that we talked about going into the game, that you're going to remember, that these things add up over time. And, Michael Jordan is known that way. Patrick Mahomes is known that way because they deliver in those moments. And I think as we look ahead the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to look at these moments as ones that Josh Allen has to deliver in. And it's a shame because I thought the one that we remember the most was 13 seconds, and he did deliver it in that moment, and it didn't matter because of Sean McDermott and some of the other downfalls in 13 seconds. But it's a shame because being that great, of the greatest players that we talk about, to be in that category, you get looked at in a different way in those moments. And that was just one of my takeaways from that game, is that I think it was a little bit of a hit to the legacy that could always be rewritten, but for the moment, I think it was a little bit of a hit.
Yeah, it's the down cycle of the being a Bills fan, right? Like we're all kind of like still mopey after Sunday, but before long, the season of optimism will begin once again, and we'll start talking free agency and draft and OTAs, and before long, we'll be back at St. John Fisher, Matt. And I got to say, on behalf of Gino, the time that you spend covering this team and spend with us here in the Sports Bar, sharing what you learn covering this team is invaluable. We can't do it without you, and really just appreciate your time throughout the course of this season, as frustrating as it might have been from time to time.
Hey, man, this is always, I tell people all the time, I do a lot of radio hits. This is usually one of my favorite 20, 25 minutes of the week. I mean, you guys are the salt of the earth. I've used that phrase a couple times this week, but I truly mean it with you both. Even Gino, who I got to say, every time I see your face in the press box, buddy, it brings a huge smile to my heart. So thank you for having me all these weeks. And, hey, let's do it again next year.
You got it. Matt Farino covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard, sharing his observations here from the end of the season here, the game on Sunday, locker cleanout yesterday, and Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott speaking to the media in their end-of-season press conferences today.
Yeah, it's a lot to react to. And the storyline about Diggs, Perino brings up a good point. Like, if you want Josh to really be the alpha, he can't be the co-alpha on offense.
Right. And Diggs has served his role admirably while in Buffalo. He's the guy that has been pumping up all the guys on offense. He's the guy. And Josh Allen told us himself at training camp, he's the guy that brings the juice. I need it. Come on. Positive. Always up. getting his guys up, getting them gassed. That's the role he's played. If that rubs off on Josh Allen and Diggs isn't around, Josh Allen can be that guy. Now you're the true alpha. Now you're not just on the field, because you're already kind of that on the field. We know it. We see it. He's a competitor on the field. But I want it off the field too. I really do. He needs a little bit of that. It's not an arrogance. It's a confidence. It's a recognition of, hey, if we're going to do this, then let's truly do it together. And any good relationship is built on a foundation of trust. And you just know that Beane and McDermott don't 100% trust him. They trust him, but not with everything. They're not collaborating on everything.
If you're McDermott, you forgive, but you don't forget.
Oh, I
in the
think
back
that,
of your mind. That's what happened last spring.
Yeah, I think that guy holds a grudge and doesn't forget. I think that guy will not let go of a grudge. I guarantee, and not just McDermott, the entire organization. How do we know this? Exhibit A, Ty Dunn. I mean, right? Like, this is an organization. I can ask Matt Perino if the season was a failure, but if any of those beat reporters asked Sean McDermott if this season was a failure, are they at the next press conference? Do they keep score? Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
You can ask that question, and that's why don't you ask the tough question? Well, he's going to the card there, like, well, we'll take a look at everything. We didn't get to the goal that we wanted.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But ask the question. Is the season a failure? You'll get the answer that he gave. He didn't need to, I guess you don't need to ask the question when you know what the answer is going to be. We're not satisfied. We're proud, but we're not satisfied. This is the answer.
I'm extremely proud of what we've accomplished, but not in any way satisfied or going to get complacent with where we're at. Every year you start over, and every year that fire, I can tell you and promise you, that fire burns within me as bright as it did the year before, if not more so. So, we're disappointed, yes, but not broken.
Yeah, that would be the answer you would get.
I was at the press conference, Danger.
You were? I didn't know this.
I asked him that question.
Get out of here.
I asked him that question. Here's the tape. My question to Sean McDermott was, Sean, was this season a failure?
Do you get a promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure? That's what you're telling me? No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, exactly. So why are you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports.
What?
There's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not. Some days it's your turn, some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's going to win. And this year, somebody else is going to win. Yeah. Simple as that.
Okay. There you go. There's Giannis. Hey,
what Sean McDermott got an accent on?
No, that's you're not going to get that answer from Sean McDermott because he's a little bit. He's not going to take as much offense as Giannis did to that question being asked, and he already knows what the answer is going to be. And the answer is what we've been saying all along. From the moment Giannis gave that quote, we hate that quote. Because the answer is yes, it was a failure.
You were a 1 seed.
Yes, your coach lost his job a couple days after you said that the season wasn't a failure. How are you going to tell me that the season wasn't a failure? It was a failure. But that doesn't mean that it was bad. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from it. That doesn't mean that you can't come back next year and be better. And I think that's what Sean McDermott is essentially saying. So you don't really have to ask him the question because you get that answer anyways. But it's hard for me to look at the season knowing that the Super Bowl was that close and not say that it wasn't a failure. Every year you don't get it, it's a failure. Doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. Doesn't mean that you can't improve. Doesn't mean that you can't grow or learn. But it's a failure, in my opinion.
Milwaukee today, in case you missed it, they fired Adrian Griffin.
Yeah, there's something there, right? They've got.
They're 30-13. Don't tell me about the offense and Yeah, no.
Something's got to be up with that. I mean, now you got a report from Woj saying that Doc Rivers is one of the veteran coaches that they're going to bring in to potentially replace him. And if that's the case,
that'll fix it.
Yeah, if that's the case, and it's like, oh, so you think you want an adult in the room, you want somebody with more experience in the room to be able to manage who you have in that room. I guess I'll hear that, but to move on from the guy when you're 30-13, I mean, you're 6-4 in your last 10. Something has to be up. There has to be more to it than what we'll ever know. Or you're just an organization that's looking and saying, all right, he's good, but we can do better. We can find somebody better, somebody with more experience, somebody with more of a pedigree. I don't know. Kind of breaking news here in the last hour or so in the sports bar. We'll shift to Amerks hockey here in a little bit. Seth Appert, Rochester Americans head coach, joins us in a little under a half an hour from now. You can join us as well on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 866-4326. We've got some takes next in the sports bar.
And it's a big, big night. We're going to find out who goes into the Baseball Hall of Fame. We may have a special guest coming up.
Oh, who cares?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Danger.
Baseball Hall of Fame. Who votes on that?
The Baseball Writers of America.
Oh, wow. I wonder what the temperature is right now high atop Mount Pius. Maybe we can get one of them to come down with the peasantry here and mingle amongst us and let us know exactly what's on their mind. Can't wait. I've also got a non-sports take that I would like to share. It's something that my wife pointed out that I do, that I didn't realize I do. But now that I know that I do it, I'm really going to lean into it. And I think every guy should lean into this.
Okay.
It's a habit that we have, or at least some of us have. We'll get to that and more next. I'll Drink to That is on the way in the sports bar. Danger and Battaglia on the Fan.
W239BF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
2023 season comes to a close for the Buffalo Bills. The annual State of the Bills press conferences. Head coach Sean McDermott knows there are decisions ahead in free agency.
I think the biggest thing we can do is start over again from the standpoint of the process starts over again, and we're honest and true and genuine with our evaluations of personnel, and then you move forward and trying to put it together again.
Tom Telesco, meanwhile, the former Raider, former Charger GM, he is the new general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders. The Milwaukee Bucks firing head coach Adrian Griffin today. The Bucks tie for the second best record in the NBA this season at 30-13. Buffalo Sabres begin their West Coast swing tonight. 10 o'clock for the coverage tonight. Sabres in Anaheim. Syracuse basketball tonight back at the Dome where they're undefeated this season. They take on Florida State. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Good season overall, obviously not the result, the ultimate goal that we were looking to accomplish. I applaud the organization, all involved, the team, the players, the coaching staff, and we look forward to continuing to reach and strive for that ultimate goal of winning a world championship.
Has this team, under this leadership, maybe not Brandon Beane, but this head coach, reached its ceiling?
Mike Danger.
We collectively just have to be at peace with knowing that this team will be competitive. This team will contend for division titles, but this team won't get home. And if you're okay with that, Sean McDermott will be in Buffalo for a long, long time.
Gene Battaglia.
You mentioned how there's going to be some changes in the roster, and I agree with you on that. And we're wondering to what degree, but what is next for the Bills? Is it, hey, we're going back all in 2024? You know what? We got to be prudent here.
I think you can do a little bit of both. You make some moves, but you still have Josh Allen and a lot of talent. You're going to be in the mix. I don't ever see them with Josh Allen in the smack middle of his prime taking a year off.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
We'll talk to Amerks head coach Seth Appert here in about 10-15 minutes or so as the Amerks continue their homestand on a bit of a heater, 3-game winning streak. We'll get the latest from the Rochester Americans. Here at a couple few in the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia, glad you're with us, listening along at 95.7 FM, AM 950. You know we're streaming our show as well on our YouTube channel, at The Fan Rochester. You can watch us on Twitch, at The Fan Rochester as well, in the free-to-download Odyssey app, and then on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
Yeah, we've got some takes here on tap here, and plenty of Bills takes here, right? And here's one more on Josh Allen, because I've been getting a lot of this. Wait a second. At what point does this happen for Josh Allen? It's only fitting, right? He was a divisive figure coming into the league. Many, including myself, said, don't draft this guy. Well, now we're heading into year 7, and there are Allen takes everywhere, including up-to-date player comps. Who would you compare him to? I read this one. Josh Allen is Karl Malone. This from Doug in Honeymoon Falls. Josh Allen as Mike Trout.
Ooh, he's digging. That's a dig. That's a reach out to me. Mike Trout, fantastic player, not a winner.
Stat compiler doesn't. Different sport. Here's my comp. Josh Allen is John Elway.
No,
physically gifted, repeated bad endings. It wasn't until year 14 that Elway finally got that Super Bowl ring. Gosh, you hope it's not that long. We think of Elway today as a winner, but trust me, that was not the narrative for the majority of his career.
Yeah. I want to compare him to the elite quarterbacks, right? I want to say he's like a Brady or a Manning or even now what we've seen, a Mahomes. But I don't see that mean streak in him. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's an alpha. Yes, he's a competitor. Yes, he wants it. On the field, you can't say anything but that, right? But what about off the field? What about his personality when he's not between those lines?
He's not going to be the guy, at least he's shown us, that is going to say to Brandon Beane in his exit interview, you need to get me better receivers other than Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy. What did you expect?
Right.
I need more. He's not going to go on McAfee and kind of blow up the organization that way.
Right. And I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott knew that was his personality, and that gives them a little bit of safety and security as well. But I would love to know that's something that Josh Allen is a part of. That Josh Allen, because you could be both. You can still be like Peyton Manning is beloved. He's got a great personality. Everybody loves him. But you know what? He was a massive, on the sideline when things weren't going their way. Tom Brady, same thing. You can be both. You can absolutely be both. But right now, you see the competitor between the lines off the field. It's, Josh is everybody's friend. And I guess that's fine. I just want a little bit more. So I don't know. Who do I want? I want to compare him to the elite quarterbacks of our time, but he's not there. He's good. I'll even say he's great. He's not elite. He is not elite. I'm sorry. You can't beat Patrick Mahomes. You're not elite. Can't get to a Super Bowl. You're not elite. Got to get there. Great stats. Amazing plays. He's not the problem.
Matt Perino said this, though. That was the moment where the great ones kind of rise up.
Yep.
I'm winning the game.
Yep.
And in second and third down, that didn't happen.
Yep. That's right. I have a non-sports take today, and courtesy of my wife, Sandy. And she pointed out something that I do. And I think a lot of guys do this, but I don't realize it. And I'm about to advocate for all men to do this forever, every time. No excuses moving forward. I want you to picture this. The night is beginning. You're getting set to watch some action. You're settling in. Your beverage of choice is in hand. And the beverage doesn't matter here. It could be a beer. It could be an IPA. It could be a bourbon. Hell, a margarita will do if that's your thing. First sip. Let out a satisfying grunt afterwards. And you know what I'm talking about, right? I didn't even realize I do this, but I think it's just wired in me. Not to be confused with the that you may let out after a refreshing sip of water. Like, I'll demonstrate.
Okay.
Refreshing sip of water.
That's not what we're talking about.
Not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that first sip, more of like a power grunt, a growl. Set a tone for the night ahead. Let everyone know it's about to go down, and you're leading the charge. A testosterone-laced validation of how delicious that first sip is. Got to give out a grunt on the first sip, Gino. I appreciate my wife pointing it out, no matter how annoying I may be to her. Tonight, let out a little growl with that first sip.
Sounds like your wife is using you to write the new Dr. Rick commercial. Like, that's what, like, you do when you're getting out of a chair. Like
not the same thing.
That is the same thing.
No, not the same thing. Getting up out of a chair is a sign that you're old. I get that. Like, I acknowledge that. I remember the first time I actually caught myself doing that. I think it was close to 10 years ago now. I was getting out of my truck, and I just remember going,
You're going to do it more, though, dude.
No, maybe, but that's not what I'm talking about here. This is and it doesn't matter how old you are. You can do this when your 21st birthday. Take that first sip of whatever the shot that you down. It's a growl more than it is a strain.
Yeah, I guess when you're doing a shot, I notice that you do that. Like, you have to let out something like...
It's a bit of a power move. Yeah. I kind of like it, and I think it sets a tone. I'm all for it, and I'm glad my wife pointed that out. I didn't realize I do it, but now that I think about it, I think I probably do it with every first sip I take. Even with a glass of wine, you can get away with it. You can box wine mafia. You can go ahead. Splash a little box wine, a little brosé, whatever you want to do, whatever your flavor of choice. Take that first sip.
Now I'm going to be conscious tonight.
Take a first sip. Take your first sip. Yeah. Feels good. Tastes better.
Seth Apper coming up. Coming up tonight at Danger at 6 o'clock. It's time for Baseball Writer. It's the announcement of who gets into the Hall of Fame. And to help us break it down, we welcome in Baseball Writer to share his thoughts.
Oh, Baseball Writer is here. That's great. Wait, Gene disappeared from the stream. I don't know where Gene went, but maybe Baseball Writer, welcome into the sports bar. Glad that you could grace us with your presence. How is the temperature up there on Mount Pius this time of year? Is it more comfortable down here with the peasantry?
I like coming on the air with you here. Rochester's such a fine baseball town, and
rich in
always
history.
Great to talk to you. And right after this, I'm going to do the Bob Matthews show tonight.
Okay, good. Thanks, baseball writer.
Yes.
Good. Is Matthews still on the air? I don't know that he is, but okay. Regardless,
I think it's maybe his Facebook program. But regardless,
okay.
I absolutely love talking baseball with you good Red Wing fans here, Mike Danger, even though sometimes I disagree with the way that you treat me
baseball
on this
writer.
show.
Well, we know how important this is, and this is your Super Bowl. This is a big deal for you. This is where you get to show your authority, flex your muscle, and let the world know just how important your voice is.
Well, I wanted to let you know in advance, Mike Danger, I'm going to give you some news. I'm going to give you my ballot. I'm going to tell you who I voted for the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Tell me, baseball writer, who's in?
Well, who is in? Adrian Beltre.
Okay.
Adrian, some may say it's because 3,000 hits and that's the automatic benchmark. I say that he represents the things that we are not here in the Baseball Writers Association. As we are old, we are male, and we're white. So we need to be diverse, and that is why we will be honoring Adrian Beltre in Cooperstown.
Very good.
The other player, I really have a lot of respect. You're from Minnesota. How do you not like Joe Mauer?
Oh.
Joe Mauer, by the way, played in Rochester a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was one time when he was coming up through the ranks, Mike Danger, down in Visalia, I went into the locker room, into the clubhouse, and he was coming out of the shower and just was a striking young man. I could tell right away by his build that he was going to be a future Hall of Famer. And it's going to be great that we're going to coordinate just such a fine, striking young man into the Hall of Fame.
I didn't realize that was part of what gets you into the Hall of Fame. Your build, chiseled jawline.
Well, it's also, he also gave the interviews whenever he wanted. People ask me all the time, why don't you vote for Alex Rodriguez? And it's very simple. It's not to do with the steroids. He wouldn't give me an interview, so therefore I would not vote for him.
Very good. Yes. Also striking, I would imagine. Also, baseball writer, a little bit into the clubhouse. You really, really like the clubhouse, don't you?
Well, those COVID years when we couldn't go in, I'm just happy to go back in there.
Of course.
And talk, because I have a column coming up I need to write here.
Yeah.
And I am so eagerly awaiting the announcement tonight. So, Adrian Beltre.
I just want to rewind for a second, baseball writer. Did you say Joe Mauer was physically striking? I think those were the words you used. Physically striking? Just... Baseball writer, it's okay. This is a safe space. You can tell us how you really feel and why you think Joe Mauer belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I think as a quality person, and again, I remember it like yesterday. The water glistening off of his hair.
Oh, there it is. Okay,
and you can do all sorts of hair products.
Yeah,
Joe Mauer.
Yes. Thank you, baseball writer. We appreciate you and your contributions to the sport. You are so important. Back to Mount Pius with you. Enjoy your winter. How many days until pitchers and catchers, Gino?
What is it now, 22?
Okay.
22.
We'll get there. Always fun when baseball writer stops by the sports bar. Up next, we talked to Hamrick's head coach Seth Epert. If he's listening right now, he's like, "What do I do? Why every week with these two clowns? Really? This is the best? Are we not better than this?" The answer, no, we are not. Seth Epert joins us next. The Hamricks are hot, 3 straight wins, and at home this weekend. We'll preview this weekend's action with Seth Epert here in the sports bar. 866-4326 is our phone number if you want to join us as well.
Donations are needed to provide meals and warm beds for the many needing emergency Code Blue shelter. For
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
And the season press conferences today for the Buffalo Bills. GM Brandon Beane asked, what's the top priority?
Top priorities would be build this roster with as, many good players as we can. And that's my number one job is we have to use every asset, everything we can. Obviously, I'm going to have to be creative with the cap.
Former Chargers GM Tom Telesco, the new Raiders GM. Milwaukee Bucks today firing head coach Adrian Griffin. A little bit of a surprise, the Bucks tie for second, the best record in the NBA this season at 30-13. Buffalo Sabres tonight, 10 o'clock, the puck drop here on the Fan Rochester. They're in Anaheim. We'll talk to head coach Seth Emmerich of the Rochester Americans coming up next year in the Sports Bar. Syracuse basketball tonight, hosting Florida State. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, the Fan Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
All right, since we last spoke to Amherst head coach Seth Appert, his team has rattled off 3 straight wins, scoring some goals as well. 6 goals last Wednesday night against Lehigh Valley, 7 Saturday night at Blue Cross Arena in their win over Springfield. Hey, Coach, welcome into the Sports Bar. Thanks for joining us. Congrats on the 3-game winning streak. No, the work isn't done, but a little bit of an offensive boost here over the course of the last 3 games. Just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this current win streak that the team is on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to be on. It was a good week, and I've been saying to you guys for a month and a half now that we really like the way we're playing and the direction that we're trending in, and it's nice in the last 8 games, and especially last week, that the guys are getting rewarded a little bit for it.
Yeah, Seth, your comment today online that that this might be the best that your team is playing here, and here we are in January. Is it too soon to start looking at the standings here in the North Division?
Well, it is that time. Although I am not someone that gets standings fixated. I'm a process-oriented person and coach. I preach to our guys that if we take care of our daily habits and our daily business, the standings take care of themselves. So, but it's tight. 2nd to 7th is one good week or bad week away, and that's the North Division. I think it's just an amazing division. The quality of players and of coaches, top to bottom, is always extremely tight, and you have to fight for everything you get in our division.
Yeah, and you can make hay here, too, just glancing at the schedule. You have nothing but North Division opponents from now until the middle of February.
Yeah, we have these 5 games, 2 this week, 3 next, leading into All-Star break, and then get a few days to kind of catch our breath, and then February is insane. Our schedule is extremely demanding, including a 7 and 10 mixed in there. So, right now we just need to, keep playing the right way. Like I said, we're getting rewarded for a month and a half of doing things the right way. We've had really good practices, very strong games, not always leading to good results in the first bit of that. But credit to our guys. They've stayed the course, believing they'd get rewarded, and now we're starting to get rewarded a little bit.
Seth Appert, our guest here, the Amherst home Friday and Saturday night, so kind of the rare weekend where you're getting on back-to-back nights here. Seth, a player that really has been fun. Lucas Rushak, now 13 straight games with a point here. Where is he at in his development here, Seth?
Yeah, that's crazy. It's I think it's the longest streak in about 20 years. So since Pittis, who's a Hall of Famer for the Amherst. He came over very talented, very creative, good passer. And I've been really proud this year of the how competitive he's been on the puck. And he's had a few tastes now. He got up a couple games last year. He got up for 4 or 5 this year. And as good as he is for us, to make it in the NHL full-time, he's going to need to be in the bottom 6 probably somewhere. And bottom 6 players in the NHL have to compete on pucks. They have to forecheck. They have to be tenacious. They have to win puck battles. And he's doing those things at the highest rate of his career. And because of that, his line has the puck a lot. And then when they have the puck a lot, his offensive skill and creativity really starts taking over. So he's with Brandon Byro. He and Byro have been together quite a bit. Last week we switched the lineup and we put Brett Murray with him. and they were dominant. They matched against the other team's top lines. They had a success defensively against those top lines, while also producing offensively, which is hard to do.
Seth, what about the back and forth between the pipes? And I don't know that you're going to say that it matters one way or the other, and we all kind of recognize that Devin Levi needs to get work, but he comes down, he faces, I think it was 14 shots in the win against Springfield. Do we expect that to kind of continue here through the course of the rest of the regular season?
I think it's hard to predict. He needed to get a game. They have a back-to-back in California. He's likely to play one of these next two games out west. He hadn't played in a while because Upi is playing so good. He needed to get in a game, and we had a situation where he could get in. So, and that's part of our function in the American League, and I think it's just week to week right now with where you're trying to win in the National Hockey League while also trying to develop two young goaltenders, and that's not always easy to do. And so you just have to take it step by step, and this opportunity presented itself, and management wanted to get him in a game so he could be probably sharper if he plays out west this week.
We're talking to Seth Apper as the Amherst home Friday and Saturday night. Again, the Sabres tonight will all be staying up late in Anaheim. And then you get that break that the NHL gives the players. So the Sabres, I don't know, we call it a bye week or whatever it is. Seth, I know it might be jumping ahead, but by this time next week, we'll know if any players are back here. Do we anticipate any reinforcements after this West Coast swing is done?
I don't anticipate a lot of them. Most of the guys that are up right now have been up for most or all of the season. Rest is a weapon heading down the stretch as well. So there's a balance to all that. And we have a pretty good roster right now. We're a little thinner on D with Bryson up. Davies out with injury. But we still have 6 very, very good defensemen. We have a real full forward lineup right now. So, we have a nice lineup right now. Quite frankly, a couple of weeks ago we had too many bodies, so it's a nice opportunity for the D-Corps right now, and even only at 14 healthy forwards to get guys in a little more often. Like, Graham Slaggert's a really good hockey player that hasn't got to play enough lately. In the last 2 games he's played, he's got 3 points in 2 games. So these are opportunities where guys that like him that deserve more minutes, maybe they get a little more time.
Couple of teams staring up at the Amherst in the North Division standings. Rochester's opponent this weekend. Friday night, it's Utica. Saturday night, Laval. We just saw Utica last Friday night. We know how physical those matchups are. Any takeaways from that win on the road last Friday night, Seth?
Yeah, that was a great win. I really do believe, as much as I dislike Utica and Syracuse, I do believe going into their buildings as much as we have to against physically demanding older teams the last 3 years has made us a better team. It's toughened us up. It's hardened us. It's battle tested us for playoffs. And, and I thought that, we've been growing our team game, and the American League's interesting. You got guys that want to be in Buffalo. You got young prospects. You got Europeans. You got Russians. And you're trying to meld that all together and become a team that wants to play for each other, not just with each other. And that takes time. And I've been feeling it more and more. And then we had 2 moments in Utica that where Tyson Kozak took an extremely dirty hit from behind, head first in the boards, and Brendan Warren did not hesitate, went in and fought for him. And then a period later, we got blasted from behind into the boards again, and Joe Ciccone went right in and fought again. And those are, Cheeks and Warren are tough players, but they're not fighters. And when guys like that stick up for their teammates in that manner, those are things that galvanize a locker room and really start to earn that feeling that we're playing for each other. And I think it was a great sign on Friday, and I also think that carried into Saturday's win.
Seth, since you are playing Syracuse coming up next Wednesday and you have Utica, and I'm assuming you saw this play. It was just something I've never seen before, but follow me on this. Let me explain for everybody. Syracuse is playing Utica. You know where I'm going with this. Syracuse
Yeah,
is playing
do.
Utica. A 5-on-3 power play Syracuse has, and they pull their goalie. And then, well, wouldn't you know, there's a pass that they're trying to thread the needle when really they didn't need to. And this is in the first period, Danger. And Utica gets an empty net goal. Seth, what did you think of that play, number one? And I could see it maybe from the Syracuse's coach's standpoint where you're trying to teach things that maybe this game or this period isn't that important, but I want to kind of deliver a message. At points during the season, do you ever kind of experiment with things like that, knowing that, hey, there's going to be bigger situations coming up down the road?
Yeah, that's part of it in the American League. It really is. You can't sometimes do that always in the NHL. In the American League, sometimes you're putting guys on the ice in those moments in late games, and you're cringing. You're putting an 18, 19, 20-year-old on the ice that probably shouldn't be out there trying to protect a one-goal lead, but they need to learn. Putting a guy in the penalty kill that maybe isn't really a penalty killer, but he needs to learn. And that's the first thing that popped into my head, is that he was taking that opportunity, one, to either practice something for a bigger moment later in the year if they needed it, or it's something that they've had an idea that might work, or maybe analytics has suggested that a 6-on-3 is more successful than a 5-on-3. You never know, and it's easier to experiment those things in the American League than it is in the NHL, right? And so those are the things that popped into my head as the likely scenarios, a couple of the 2 or 3 likely scenarios that led to that. But when it goes in the back of the net, there's a lot less media pressure in the American League when it goes in the back of the net than it does if it's in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, and you know what? I got to imagine for you that's something where you're just kind of gritting your teeth and hoping for the best. And I know it's not apples to apples in terms of the scenarios we're talking about here, but there were moments I remember just a couple of seasons ago in the postseason where you're pulling the goalie real early, just trying to get that advantage when everything is on the line, especially when you're talking about postseason hockey.
Yeah, I'm an early goalie puller, so that's something I believe in. That you get them out early at the right time with fresh troops on the ice in an advantageous situation. So, the more you can practice those things, the better. But and I don't know Syracuse's coach very well, but as a coach, when I saw that, I cringed because that's a hard one to swallow right there, and we've all been there,
Yeah, Seth Appert, our guest. Seth, I don't know if you've noticed this about our community here in the last, what's it been, Danger, 48 hours, not even. People are really taking the Bills' loss seriously. I will say this. There's other things you can kind of enjoy, including your team, Seth. Friday and Saturday night, it's hockey season. So set us up here. What can we expect here coming up Friday and Saturday night? I'm sure you don't like that, hockey season doesn't begin until football season's over mentality.
No, I respect that. This is Bills country first and foremost, as it should be. And, I wish they were playing for 3 more weeks. But yeah, no, now it's an opportunity to dive in. We've had great crowds over the last month or so. We got 2 great games at home. Utica, everybody knows what it's like playing us in Utica. I mean, Friday nights can be a great game, physical, nasty, very high dislike for each other. Had 2 fights last week against each other. And then Laval is one of the hotter teams in our division right now. They have a very good lineup, and that's the American League, right? Sometimes you play a team, they don't look very good, and then you see them 2 months later and they're a wagon. Well, I mean, that's just sometimes it's injuries, call-ups, things of that nature. Right now, Laval has a really good lineup. They're humming. They're playing really good hockey. They signed a Finnish goaltender that stabilized that position for them. So we're going to have 2 great games this weekend. And like I said, the crowds have been outstanding, and I expect they will be again now.
We're looking forward to it. Wish you best of luck this weekend, Coach. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
You got it there. He is Seth Appert, Rochester Americans head coach, joining us here in the Sports Bar.
That's the thing. Sometimes you realize, you're putting guys that are not in this situation. When we get to April, you're not going to be experimenting. You're trying to win hockey games at that point, I think.
Yeah. I think the Comrie / Levi situation is interesting. It probably doesn't really affect the overall outcome of games. And if you're an American League team, you're used to that kind of shuffling of the deck constantly with your roster. But I'm just curious about the development of specifically Levi, and if he is, going to be playing second fiddle to UPL, how much work can he get when he comes to Rochester?
Well, I think this would just be my read on this. And it's tough to ask Seth this question, but we haven't even broached the idea of NHL trade deadline. Well, guess what? Where things stand right now, the Sabres will be sellers. But because there are a lot of young players on this team, what are you really selling? Well, there's going to be a team danger that, we could use some goalie insurance, and this is a player that we could send to our American Hockey League affiliate. I'm just bracing for an Eric Comrie trade. So anybody that is thinking that Eric Comrie could be that player coming up this postseason for the Amherst, I would think that if the phone rings that, Kevin Adams would accept that call.
We have happy hour coming up in a couple few. We have time for your calls if you want to pull up a stool. 866-4326 gets you into the sports bar. 585-866-4FAN. Quickly, before we take a break, 50-plus million viewers on Sunday night for Bills-Chiefs, Gino. The most watched divisional round game of all time.
Peaked at 56 million. Tell me how the NFL is struggling. Tell me how the NFL is. It had nothing to do with fantasy. Maybe daily fantasy, but come on. People are just
still have action, yeah. I got dragged into Sandy's show this morning with Spazzano and Sandy on the Buzz because they were talking about the NFL being rigged. Did you see the graphic that was mistakenly put up by a Western Canadian station?
Oh, no. I thought you were talking about the Super Bowl logo thing. Did they go down that road?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I didn't see this.
Somebody on, they were reporting on the halftime performances of the Super Bowl, and they mentioned the artists that will be performing, not at halftime, just in general. And they mentioned the Super Bowl when the Ravens take on the 49ers. Now, again, Western Canadian TV station puts this graphic up, and all I could think to myself is, yeah, they probably don't know. They're probably like, whoever put that together probably just doesn't follow the NFL. Just like if you asked us to do something related to the CFL, we wouldn't know. Or hell, even the NHL, you might not know who's playing in the Stanley Cup.
The idea that the league would be rigged for the 2 number 1 seeds, stop. Are you kidding me? If it was rigged, you'd have the Kansas City Chiefs back in there because of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Did they go down that road on that? I didn't hear
I don't
you
think
on this.
so.
No.
But it's doubling down on the language of losers. And it's prevalent at a time when your team isn't playing anymore and we have to kind of come up with something. And I don't hear anybody that listens to our show saying that the NFL is rigged. But inevitably, if there's a bad call or if something happens, you'll hear, rigged, same old NFL, always rigged. They only want these teams. Stop it.
Well, the thing that is kind of spooky, though, is the colors that they're using here in the logos. And again, it's just coincidence, okay? It's not rigged. But you go back to the Bengals-Rams, and that's a separate conversation. The Super Bowl logo, what they've done to it, awful.
Yeah.
It was always something unique with the stadium, with the place. No, now it's just generic. But now they tint the logo in 2 colors. And in advance of the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, what was in Bengals and Rams colors? How did they know that? I don't know. Well, then last year, if the Super Bowl's in Arizona, look at the old Arizona Coyotes uniforms, red and green. Okay, that's kind of the feel there, Arizona. Well, you had Philadelphia and Kansas City. Hey, how did they know that? And then everybody quick to point out this year, it's red and purple. Purple. It must mean the Ravens are in the Super Bowl. Coincidence.
Just stop it. I also look at that logo and see, I don't know, the lights of Las Vegas. I mean, I feel like they're trying to restore some of what they did with the logo, but there's no way anybody can sell or convince me on the idea that the logo or this graphic or anything proves that the NFL is rigged. Pro wrestling, different story. There's a reason why we're not able to legally wager on pro wrestling. That's a different story. The NFL, no, not the same.
Not the same. Also, there's so many different takeaways you can grab from that record number. Yeah, I think that you're going to see another season where the Buffalo Bills will get the 5 primetime games out of the gate, and then something will get flexed along the way. They are a national team.
For sure. You brought up the Bengals. Their offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, is now set to become the Titans head coach. He's the son of former Raiders head coach Bill Callahan. And with that move, I want to say that since 2020, every team in the NFL has flipped their offensive coordinator.
Which this is why you really should hire a head coach that has the offensive mind, because, well, whoever your lieutenant is on the offensive side of the ball, if they're any good, they're going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're not good, well, then you're finding somebody else.
Yeah.
That turnover, that's shocking.
Yeah.
That there is not an offensive coordinator that's in this position in the last 3 years, that everything has turned over since.
Do you think, just looking at the Bills coaching staff, I know some of them have interviewed, Brady's coming back. I think that's probably locked in.
Yeah, they stopped short of the pin today saying that.
Oh, they're not going to give you anything today, but I feel like that it feels like a certainty. The one that's interesting is Bob Babich.
He interviewed as the defensive coordinator for the Giants today.
Yeah. That one feels like there's something there that would make some sense. That one wouldn't surprise me if you lost him.
So the Bills bring in Wink Martindale? No, not at all. The Callahan in Tennessee, like if you're a Titans fan, aren't you kind of like, oh, like we have all the
enthusiasm there would be, hey, can you turn this offense into something? Can you identify Will Levis as the dude? Is he the dude? Build an offense like you did in Cincinnati. Although how much of that was him in Cincinnati and the actual head coach who came with the offensive pedigree that he had coming in from L.A.
My read on it is like Mike Vrabel, just on merit alone, I don't think he deserved to be fired. It was kind of a rebuilding year, but if he wasn't getting along with the GM, all right, well then that can happen, and that move was made, and the assumption that Mike Vrabel would be already hired, which he is yet to be hired.
Yeah, the word is that he also interviewed for the Chargers gig, and the Chargers reportedly close to a deal to make Jim Harbaugh, their next head coach. Also hearing that Pete Carroll reportedly has been pushing for some consideration as well. I don't think the Chargers are biting on that one, so we kind of wait and see as these dominoes start to fall.
Back in L.A., doesn't he?
Yeah. We mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Buffalo Bills. Expect the Bills to end up with an extra third-round pick with the compensatory draft pick formula falling their way, and that'll be towards the tail end of the third round.
We could say that, but remember that their original pick is gone. That was like they moved down to the 5th, so they didn't give up a pick per se, but they moved down 2 rounds for Rasul Douglas. And look, that's going to be coming up in the 2024 draft. I think the 2025 draft, you're going to be talking about more than one compensatory pick.
Got a lot of free agents leaving. Yep, the Eagles actually getting a haul. They have projected a third rounder and 3 fifth-round compensatory picks coming up here in this year's draft. And also today we learned who the referee will be for the Super Bowl in a few weeks here. It'll be Bill Vinovich and his crew. He also reffed Super Bowl 49 and Super Bowl 54.
Out of Vegas today, normally you kind of hire the GM first and then the head coach. The Raiders do things to their own beat. They decide, okay, Pierce is your guy, fine. Tom Telesco gets the gig. So he's the Buffalo native that had been the Chargers GM for how long and then got blown out with everybody else. What do you think of that move?
I think it's interesting. And I think it's mostly interesting because the Raiders kind of, I feel like, did it backwards where you hired your guy first. I just think Antonio Pierce must have some sort of weight within that organization or strikes fear. I could see Antonio Pierce being the kind of guy that would strike fear into Mark Davis, intimidate Mark Davis into making moves. But, the Telesco hire will be interesting, and can the two of them coexist? I imagine they spent some time together once you had the head coach figured out and you knew that it was going to be Pierce. How much time did Pierce spend with Telesco for Telesco to be able to say, yeah, I can work with that guy. We'll be good.
Yeah, till they find who their quarterback is.
Yeah, it's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Happy hour next in the Sports Bar. Your calls, 866-4326. We heard from Brandon Beane. We heard from Sean McDermott. We had a great conversation earlier this afternoon with Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard. We'll break all of it down next on The Fan.
You're listening to the Sports Online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
End of the season press conferences today for the Buffalo Bills. Head coach Sean McDermott knows there's decisions ahead in free agency.
I think the biggest thing we can do is start over again from the standpoint of the process starts over again, and we're honest and true and genuine with our evaluations of personnel, and then you move forward and trying to put it together again.
Meanwhile, Tom Telesco, former Charger GM, he's the new GM of the Las Vegas Raiders. The Milwaukee Bucks, a surprise, firing their head coach today, Adrian Griffin. He was in his first season. The Bucks tied for the second best record in the NBA this season at 30-13. Buffalo Sabres after dark tonight. They're in Anaheim. 10 o'clock for the coverage here on The Fan. Syracuse basketball at home tonight against Florida State. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Good season overall, obviously not the result, the ultimate goal that we were looking to accomplish. I applaud the organization, all involved, the team, the players, the coaching staff, and we look forward to continuing to reach and strive for that ultimate goal of winning a world championship.
Has this team, under this leadership, maybe not Brandon Beane, but this head coach, reached its ceiling?
Mike Danger.
We collectively just have to be at peace with knowing that this team will be competitive. This team will contend for division titles, but this team won't get home. And if you're okay with that, Sean McDermott will be in Buffalo for a long, long time.
Gene Battaglia.
You mentioned how there's going to be some changes in the roster, and I agree with you on that. And we're wondering to what degree, but what is next for the Bills? Is it, hey, we're going back all in 2024? You know what? We got to be prudent here.
I think you can do a little bit of both. You make some moves, but you still have Josh Allen and a lot of talent. You're going to be in the mix. I don't ever see them with Josh Allen in the smack middle of his prime, taking a year off.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Lots and lots of decisions that need to be made this offseason by the Buffalo Bills. But for me, there's really just one decision. It's a this or a that, and everything kind of falls under that. We'll get to that and more here in the Sports Bar. We're gracious that you're joining us here in the Sports Bar. Appreciate you stopping by and listening along locally at 95.7 FM, AM 950. You can find The Fan Rochester in the free-to-download Odyssey app. Our stream is up on YouTube and on Twitch at The Fan Rochester, and we're even on your smart device if you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. Gino, I think to myself, if they're going to make all of these little micro decisions through the course of the season, it falls under the umbrella of this macro decision that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, really Brandon Beane, needs to figure out. Are you going to continue to build this team around your head coach, or are you going to try and build this team around your superstar quarterback?
Yeah, as you heard, it wasn't any bombshells. There really, truthfully, weren't any nuggets, but the talk about more explosive plays. Well, you could say that means the Bills are going to go out there and invest at that position, but what team doesn't need more explosive plays? Honestly. Sean McDermott's not going anywhere, folks. He talk today. I will entertain your opinion, but to me, it's wasting energy. He's not going to go anywhere. So Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, just like your financial planner who says, I made your portfolio to over the long haul. Well, instead of, it's Mr. Pagula. And instead of talking about portfolio, they're talking about this roster, how it's good enough. And you just kind of need to ride this out. And they're going to run it back next year. And just didn't leave you all excited, say, let's go get him next year. It's almost like we're becoming numb to the annual State of the Bills address, so to speak, here on a Tuesday afternoon in the month of January.
Yep, same talking points, same result. And if you think that Terry Pagula is outraged or is evaluating, not the case, according to Sean McDermott.
Yeah, very, very supportive. We have great lines of communication with Terry, and he's disappointed like we are, but he's just very supportive, and he understands how hard it is to try and get to that ultimate goal, and so I couldn't ask for a better owner.
Have you felt any shift in for lack of a better term, approval rating with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
No. And that's a question for him.
Yeah, Matt Perino with the good one there. Any dip in your approval rating with Terry Pegula? Why would he? I mean, he's disappointed. Why is he disappointed? He's counting his money while he's disappointed. 2 extra playoff games this year, 2 extra playoff games last year at home. I mean, he's got to be thrilled, over the moon with the job that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are doing just as a businessman. Now, if he's disappointed that they didn't win, I would want to know, how disappointed? Is he so disappointed that he would consider making some sweeping changes, some drastic changes? Because that's not a question you can ask Sean McDermott. Not like Sean McDermott's going to say, you know what, yeah, I deserve to lose my job. No, Terry Pegula needs to be the one to make the call. He's made it in the past, but he seems very, very hands-off. And I think that coincides with Kim falling ill. We haven't heard from him.
Ooh, that's an interesting angle. Like, if it was still Terry and Kim, and now it's just Terry.
Yeah. We're just not hearing anything from him.
But would there be something different? Because Kim has been known to fire executives. Kim is always
more engaged. More engaged. And maybe Terry was a part of that. But the change that I think a lot of people, at least the evaluation that I think a lot of people want this team to do, doesn't feel like it's going to happen unless it's happening under the watchful eye of Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott.
Well, maybe. And Brandon Beane, he used the same exact phrase that he did 2 years ago, that, talking about the big splash move.
Yeah.
The word splash. Don't expect that. And look, I think that it's real this year. Like, they have to figure out, you can just still do things in free agency, but he talked about, not shopping on he couldn't think of Fifth Avenue. Okay, like, that's the street in New York City that you want to shop on. We're not shopping on Fifth Avenue. We're going to be a little more, shopping at the Five and Dime. Okay, well, it worked out for the Bills last year. You got Connor McGovern in that regard. You're going to have to probably get a pass rusher, a safety, something along those lines.
Here's Brandon Beane on the Bills' salary cap situation.
I mean, it's not, we don't have, the same money we had going into 2019, in 2020. But we'll work around it. We're not planning to take a year off and just not be competitive. Will we be younger in some areas? Yes. Will we have to rely on draft picks? Maybe we don't have, maybe we're not able to keep 5 D tackles that we feel can play this year. Or maybe there's some positions, we've always tried to create as much depth as we could for what we saw. We had to play with some depth down the stretch. Sometimes when you're trying to work your cap and when you're paying a quarterback up here, and we've definitely been aggressive on some pieces the last couple of years, that's not going to be an option, Jay, to your question. But I don't think, I'm not laying my head down tonight going, we don't have a shot at it next year.
I played a little drinking game while this was happening in the lunch hour. I did a shot for every time Brandon Beane said, listen, you're lucky I was able to stumble into the sports bar at 3:00 this afternoon.
Listen, wait, I just did that.
Yeah, you
listen,
did.
Listen. Yeah. There's another thing too, though. And we talked to Matt Perino earlier. You love to have Von Miller off the roster. Like, the production's not there. And they said all the right things because they might be stuck with him. Matt Perino said they're going to be stuck with him. I just believe that if there was a way out, they would find it. But for this to happen by March for cap relief, hard for me to kind of predict that would happen. But what about somebody else with a big cap figure? What about the unexpected? Could the Bills actually eat cap space, take a half step back to get to where they want to go? And I'm talking about number 14. Like, that wasn't the same Steph Diggs the second half of the season. Now, was he hurt? They didn't say so today. Probably because, if it was true, then you'd be getting a fine from the league for not putting him on the injury report for whatever it was. Or has he just lost a half step? Would you entertain that idea, Mike Danger?
Yeah, it was actually something that Brandon Beane said that made me think, they're not going to be, we call it McDermott McLies for a reason. Like they're not lying, but they're not telling the truth at the same time. Brandon Beane's comments on Steph Diggs made my ears perk up.
He's a number one receiver. I firmly believe that. I'm not wavering off of that. I think teams, listen, we have to continue to put weapons out there to keep teams from bracketing him or, locking him down in different ways to take him away. They know you're going to want him. So Steph can still play. I'm sure he would love to have that, that deep ball again. He'd be the first to tell you. He's super competitive. He's going to work his tail off this offseason. And I know there's various reasons or questions on this or his production, all that, but I still see Steph as a number one receiver.
Lots of working of the tail as well this offseason. You're going to hear a lot of working of the tail.
Yeah, like I've heard, more about Sean McDermott's backside. Wow, he coached his ass off.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
The Diggs comment that caught my ear was what he said right off the top. Steph Diggs is the number one receiver. Not was, is. And then I thought to myself, well, part of Brandon Beane's job is he's a sales guy, and you're trying to woo other people. You're exploring every option you need to put out there that you've got a wide receiver, though, even though his production dipped second half of the season, that I still consider to be a number one wide receiver. And maybe he is a number one wide receiver. And maybe he stays with the Buffalo Bills, or maybe he's pumping up the tires of Steph Diggs so that they can make a move to get Steph Diggs to another team. If you do that, do you lose as much as you think you lose? The production dipped significantly. It's been well documented. You hear about what a great leader he is, what a great teammate he is. I'm not here to dispute any of that. But you know what? The two things may be married here. And part of what we were talking about earlier here, these end-of-season press conferences. Josh Allen on the field, to a man, you will hear people describe him as a dog, competitor. He's an alpha out there. And we see it with his play. We see it with his actions on the field. Off the field, different guy. Doesn't really have that mean streak. Hell, when we talked to Josh at training camp and asked him specifically about Steph Diggs, he mentioned Diggs as the guy that comes in with the juice. He's the guy that pumps everybody up. He's that guy. He's him. But what if Steph Diggs being that guy is preventing the guy that needs to be that guy from being that guy? And that guy is Josh Allen. That Josh Allen needs to be the guy that's holding everybody to a higher standard, including his wide receivers, including his coach and his general manager, as maybe Steph Diggs did last offseason. We may never know.
Well, go back to training camp where Diggs said something insightful where he admitted, I have fewer days ahead of me, more days behind me. He's going to be 31 next season.
Yep.
31.
He's under contract with the Bills through 2027.
This is a terrible we talk about the Von Miller contract. This is ugly. And just you do the quick Google search in terms of receivers and what happens after age 30. It's not quite like a running back. And yes, you have the outlier, okay? The outlier being Jerry Rice, 128 touchdowns in his career after age 30. I mean, he's the greatest of all time. Can we just admit that? But everybody else? Like how many other receivers after age 30 have more than 50? I can tell you a list right here. Well, Tony Gonzalez is a tight end. He had 50. Chris Carter with 58. End of list. If you think Steph Diggs is going to be a big part of this offense in 2025, then you need to have the conversation or explore the possibility right now. Because if there is a team out there that says, boy, that is the missing piece, you're not getting a number one pick for Steph Diggs. But could you do like a pick swap maybe? Could you move up and get some really nice asset?
You're at a spot, if you're Brandon Beane, where you're going to have to get creative. And he said it himself. This cap situation is not great.
Well, let's be clear about Steph Diggs. That doesn't solve your problem. In fact, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Makes it worse because you accelerate all those dollars and you'd be tacking on 30 additional million. So where your problem right now, between anybody's estimate, let's just say it's 45, now it's 75. Well, part of that, you kick half of that over to 2025. But if you're trying to build this for long-term success, and if you're factoring in, this is the part we don't know. Like, we see Diggs in front of the camera. We see him pumping up his teammates. We see him everything. But from a chemistry standpoint, would it be better to completely overhaul the receiver position? Shakir being one guy you want in there, but everybody else after that?
Shakir and Shorter, Dalton Kincaid.
Shorter's an unknown. I'm sorry. Like, Shorter's coming back. Yeah.
But I just physically seeing that guy at training camp, I can't wait. That's the guy I'm excited to see next year, aside from whoever they draft.
Yeah, he's a guy that can compete for a spot.
Yeah.
Whether he's any good, we'll see. It could be like there was a receiver a few years ago that was, I digress.
They're not ones.
Yeah.
Neither of them.
No.
We don't really know what Shorter is, but we can say with near certainty he's probably not a one. And maybe you get that one in the draft. We're going to continue to have the conversation about what the Bills will do versus what they should do. I think everybody agrees they should draft a wide receiver with the first-round draft pick. What they will do, in my opinion, is focus on the defense. And again, it goes back to the question, the number one dilemma of this offseason: do you build this team, as you have, around your head coach, or do you build it around your quarterback? I think the answer is simple. I don't know that they're going to see it the way I see it.
Well, or how do you get your quarterback to kind of step out of his comfort zone?
On the field, I don't know that I need him to step out of his comfort zone. On the field, I think he's not the problem. He makes bad decisions, and that you hope improves as he matures, as he continues to learn and grow in the game. He's not elite. We can stop that right now. I know a lot of people want to throw that label on him. He is not that guy.
Physically gifted, elite. Matt Perino spelled it out. Reasons why the Buffalo Bills lost against the Chiefs. And Perino had to be clear about this. Josh was very good in that game. But the great ones, when the game is on the line, they deliver. And on 2nd and 9 and on 3rd and 9, Josh Allen did not deliver in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And danger to me, I'm telling you the truth. When Tyler Bass started going out there, I had the pit in my stomach. I'm like, they lost that game. I'm not the only one who thought that. Anybody looking up the clock, like, how could you mismanage this grossly? Is that the head coach? Is it the quarterback? I mean, we could go over that tape. Everybody will. It's the new version of 13 seconds, what happened at the end of the game. And why isn't there this outrage? Well, we're all kind of getting comfortable with how this team is getting to this point.
There's no outrage because we've seen this movie a dozen times.
Let me stop everybody, because I heard this in the office today, and this is loser talk. Loser talk. 17 years, you would sign up for this. Stop connecting the two. Stop it. Okay?
It's not really a take. It's kind of like common sense. Like, of course you would rather have a team that has a winning record and is in the playoffs over a team that was in a funk for 17 years. It's not really a take. That's like saying ice cream is delicious.
Yeah.
Puppy dogs are cute. Like, yeah, of course. Of course. And you should expect more and accept less in life. The expectation should be the Super Bowl. These guys hold themselves to a high expectation. They say that they're disappointed, and they say that they're going to keep working. They're going to work their tail off, and they're going to get better, and they're going to use this as fuel, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all before. It's all the same thing. It's the same press conference we heard last year at the same time. These guys have their notes and their beats absolutely memorized. Nothing has changed. And I don't know that anything will change. So, mentioned it yesterday. Can we be at peace? And I think a lot of fans can be at peace with the idea that this is a team that will entertain the hell out of you. It's a community that you can be a part of. Go to the games. And when the new stadium opens up, everything changes. It'll be a brand new experience, and it'll be so exhilarating. And you're a part of that. You could be satisfied with that, then you're going to be happy. It doesn't matter. Wins, losses, early exits from the playoffs, who cares? I got my shiny new stadium. I got my Bills Mafia. We got our Joshy boy, and we can have some fun every Sunday. Or you could be looking at this wider and saying, you know what? Super Bowl or bust.
Well, let me point this out too. Okay. What's the path for a number 1 seed and number 2 seed? Oh, no. It's drastic, okay? It is. So quit farting around in the regular season, whether that's losing to Urban Meyer or this year, the Jet game, the Patriot game, 13 men on the field or how many are out on the field. Those are games that you should have won. You didn't win because of special teams or whatever the case may be. Your goal needs to be number 1 seed. Because look at Baltimore. Is Baltimore head and shoulders over Buffalo in terms of talent? Well, we can have the debate, but they're the number 1 seed. And their path is a heck of a lot easier. That bye week, it makes a big difference. Some say, oh, that hurts you. No, it doesn't. It does not. And number 2, you get the worst of the bunch. You're going to get the worst of the division winners. And like Houston was not ready for prime time. Jordan Love, not ready for prime time. And voila, you get to host the championship game. So let's review. Bye week, play a team that's not ready, and then you get to host the championship game. That's where it should start next year. Number 1 seed. Quit farting around in the regular season. It can be done.
I don't think it can be done. Nope. Not with this team.
Not with this coach?
Not with this coach. Nope. I do not think it can be done. I think he can get you as far as he can get you. And, you know, he's the first one at the end of the season press conference to rattle off all the accomplishments. 10-win seasons, playoff appearances.
Hate that. Don't be like you should be grateful.
It's Kyler Murray rattling off
high school
all of his accomplishments, right? I mean, it's this, let me justify why I deserve to be here because of all of these accomplishments. And I don't want to take anything away from the organization. I don't want to take anything away from Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, because the guy that does say I would sign up for this over the losing seasons is right. This is better than the drought, of course. But if you want them to be more, you should expect more. And I don't think they're going to be able to get there with everything that's in front of them. We'll watch through the course of the offseason, and it's still raw. We're still in the down cycle of Bills fandom, right? Things will get a little bit brighter with each passing day. By the time we get to free agency and there's a couple of moves in there, we can evaluate, well, what are they doing? What's this? What's going on now? Then you have the draft. Everything comes back full circle, and we'll go through this song and dance all over again. But I don't expect things to be that drastically different in 2024 for this team. I think it's going to be more of the same. Because you're not running it back. You can't run it back, but you're going to try and get as many of those guys to come back. And the guy that you are running it back with is the guy that I have the most questions about.
Chris writing in, Chris, you're a good contributor, but no, like you're making my point here, saying, hey, I'll give you another guy who had 25% of his total careers after the age of 30, Larry Fitzgerald. He, Rice, and Gonzalez were outliers in that regard. Chris, you're missing the point. Larry Fitzgerald had only, 122 career touchdowns after the age of 30. Larry Fitzgerald, 34. Like, the production, the vast majority of I'm not paying for 25%. That's my point. I want to pay for the 75%. Give me the 75% and start building for the future.
Yeah, you've got a couple of, when you see them, deals through 2027 between Miller and Diggs, where when you see it, you're like, eeh.
Oh, very class of Von Miller to say, I'll be right back, guys. The Ghost Burrito and everybody else on Monday.
Absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Just pulls a Houdini and just disappears. just disappears on locker cleanout.
Why am I not surprised?
Captain Von Miller. That's a leader. Why are you not? Nobody should be. Okay. Like, I've been done with that guy. Right? Didn't see anything. Wanted to see something, and it's just clear. Like, we're dealing with the hologram. Do you really believe that next year when training camp starts that he's going to show up and be the impactful player he was in his prime? He's not going to be prime Von Miller. You're paying all that money for a guy that is a hologram of his former self. Not a contributor. Eating up a roster spot. Maybe can be a mentor, but is a mentor worth what you're paying that guy? I'd rather pay a guy that can get to the quarterback, personally. Let the coach be the mentor. Jeez, you got a lot of stuff to work out here. They recognize it, and we'll see what happens. I would imagine that if there's going to be some changes in the coaching staff, we'll hear about them over the course of the next few days to next couple of weeks. We know that linebackers coach Bobby Babich, interviewed for the Giants defensive coordinator position.
Of course. What do you know?
Yeah. Feels like that could be a problem. We'll see if you value having Bobby Babich on your coaching staff. And I get the sense that Brady is back. Joe Brady will be back, and they'll strip the interim tag off of his title. Just a hunch, but you've got the endorsement of Josh Allen, which I think, according to these guys, means a lot. So there you go, your end of season press conference. The season has wrapped for the Buffalo Bills. We had a great conversation with Matt Perino from the Syracuse Post-Standard in the 3 o'clock hour. If you missed it, you can go back in the Odyssey app with Rewind and listen to any part of the show that you may have missed for the next 72 hours. We've also got it posted for you wherever you get your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar. That includes Apple Podcasts and the free-to-download Odyssey app, Spotify as well. Seth Appert, Rochester Americans head coach, joined us last hour with his team in a 3-game winning streak and a couple of games this weekend at home, Friday night and Saturday night. Utica and Laval, the opponents this weekend for the Rochester Americans.
Those Saturday afternoon games.
Early evening, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, right.
Kind of nice. Dig it. Let's get to a round of shots next in the Sports Bar.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about what was a historic night in the NBA, but one guy went for 63 and the coach is pissed. Why would that? I love it. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Sabres tonight, and we have some good smack talk coming out of baseball as well.
A round of shots next in the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia. Last call coming up as well. Pull up a stool at 866-4326. That's the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. Good Smoke Barbecue hosting their Valentine's Day Sweetheart Deal. That's 11:30 to 9 Wednesday, February 14th. The Sweetheart Deal is available for dine-in and takeout, minus the champagne, on the takeout at least. Treat that special person or persons in your life to a sweetheart of a deal. 3 meats, 2 sides, 2 cornbread, complimentary champagne, 2 cupcakes, all for $32.99. Reservations for dine-in, highly suggested. Go to goodsmokebbq.com to reserve online. The regular menu is also available because it's Valentine's Day and it falls on a Wacky Wing Wednesday this year. Buy one, get one dine-in wings, also available. That's Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub in East Rochester for Valentine's Day.
You're listening to Sports Update.
End of season press conferences today in Buffalo, which has become now the annual tradition. Brandon Beane asked what his top priority is.
Top priorities would be build this roster with as many good players as we can, and that's my number one job. Is we have to use every asset, everything we can. Obviously, I'm going to have to be creative with the cap.
Around the NFL, Tom Telesco, the new Raiders general manager. Milwaukee Bucks firing their head coach today, Adrian Griffin. He was in his first season. The Bucks tied for the second best record in the NBA this season at 30-13. Sabres tonight after dark, 10 o'clock for the puck drop here on the Fan Rochester. They're in Anaheim. Syracuse basketball tonight hosting Florida State. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, the Fan Rochester.
The best local sports talk in the Flower City. One Bills Live in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Weekday afternoons on The Fan, Rochester.
All right, let's get to a round of shots, Gino.
Sabres lead the all-time series with Anaheim, tonight's opponent, 23-17-4, including both games last season, putting up a combined 13 goals. Now, researching this on a fan site, Buffalo Hockey Central, little hat tip, they have a running clock of the Sabres' last playoff appearance.
Oh, no. Why would you do that?
It's like it's been 4,655 days since their last playoff game, April 26, 2011.
Oh, why would you do that to yourself?
Well, and again, I'm not, it's just, I don't want to say, well, this is how we were as Bills fans. We should be happy. No, not at all. Another switch of the goalies. We talked earlier today with Amerks head coach Seth Appert about this. Eric Comrie back to Rochester. He is back here as Devin Levi going back up to Buffalo. Also up is Jacob Bryson. The defenseman goes on the trip as insurance. 10 o'clock tonight in Anaheim.
Okay. This West Coast trip, I want to say that it matters and that you've got to beat Anaheim. I would think that the Sabres should be able to beat Anaheim, but I'm done. I'm down. I'm out on this team. They didn't do enough. They haven't done enough so far at the start of the year to get themselves in a position where you could actually believe that playoff drought is going to end.
I thought the 6-game homestand with some soft opponents, and you took care of a few, but that wasn't enough here. The conversation is going to shift now to the trade deadline, and it's another lost season in Buffalo. Rumors out of the Boston area over the weekend that Patrice Bergeron was coming out of retirement. No, that's not true. Bergeron did fly into Boston. You can see how this would kind of spark a rumor. Had dinner with friends on Friday. The 38-year-old telling the Canadian press, I'm not making a comeback, not trying to make a comeback. Not that Boston needs them. The Bruins rolling right along. They won 5 in a row. They still lead the Eastern Conference, 67 points.
Yeah, and impressively just dispatching of one of the hotter teams out west in the Jets. The Jets and the Canucks have just been hot so far this season. Yeah, the Bruins handled the Jets with relative ease.
Yeah, watching last night Vegas and Jersey, I'm like, what is this kind of hockey I'm watching here? This is
different.
Yeah.
When you watch the game I watched, maybe it was last week, was Boston and Colorado. And I'm telling you, I'm like, this is a different sport than what you see when you watch the Sabres play on a nightly basis.
Maybe Joel Embiid is the MVP this season, Danger. I can't scoff at that anymore. Incredible stat line. 70 points, 18 boards, 5 assists. Became only the 9th player ever to reach 70 in a game. Sixers beating the Spurs. Right now, Embiid is on a point per minute pace, something that's been only accomplished once in league history by Wilt Chamberlain.
Wow. Wilt Chamberlain what was his most famous accomplishment?
That was he scored in a game that was played at
Hershey
Park Arena, 100 points in a game for Philadelphia.
Are you kidding me?
100 points.
Some kind of a joke?
100 points.
What do you think I am, born yesterday?
There's no film of this game, by the way.
That's
just
right.
a picture
That's
of him
right.
holding up a 100.
I don't know, man. I mean, you believe what you want to believe, dude, but I don't believe everything that I read on the internet. Nobody was there. Prove it. Can anybody prove it? It's just him holding up a sign with 100 on it. I don't know.
We did have a team in Rochester. They were known as the Royals.
Get out of here.
It's absolutely true. They
Rochester?
And played at the now defunct Edgerton Sports Arena. So defunct arena, defunct team.
Not there. I don't believe that it ever happened.
In maybe the subway line, you could within walking.
No, I can see
distance.
the subway line. That I can see.
No, okay.
I know that we used to have a subway. That I can still see. But we used to have a basketball team. Get out of here.
The night by Embiid overshadowing the effort by Karl Anthony Towns, scoring 62 for Minnesota.
Yeah,
they lost to Charlotte.
Yeah, I love that. 62 in a losing effort.
I mean, okay, so if you think that their head coach Chris Finch was going to be like, yeah, what a great effort. Not at all.
Obviously, we're going to try to feed a hot hand, look for a hot hand, but at some point, we got to get back to making the right play. We got to get back to doing the right things. That's just, like I said, there's a lot of ways to be immature. There's always a lot of ways to be immature, and there was a lot of immature performances here throughout the roster. We totally disrespected the game, ourselves, and we got exactly what we deserve. So,
Chris, did you also see? I mean, did it turn into Karl trying to hunt like a big number?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, but for a while, it was going. But down the stretch, you kind of dried up for us. But yeah. So.
Finch has that Mayock, that short breath that Mayock famously had when he was watching Josh Allen throw a ball during his pro day.
Oh, here it is. Oh yeah, Phillips.
Oh yeah.
Oh, come on. We need that one. I mean, is there anybody like it?
Yeah. Finch has that short breath. You tell. A lot of ways to be immature. That's you as a coach calling out your star for scoring 62 in a losing effort. Well done.
The shocking move this afternoon in the NBA. So Milwaukee, they're only behind Boston in the East. They're actually tied with Minnesota for the second best record. They fired their coach, Adrian Griffin.
Yeah. He didn't make it to the All-Star break.
They just fired Budenholzer last year.
Yeah. Doc wants to coach again, I guess.
That's going to solve everything?
What solve what? What needs to be solved? They just think that they can get a better guy to be their head coach. They don't need to solve anything. They've got a great record.
30-13.
Yeah, right. Right. Doc Rivers must have one hell of a musk.
That's Lou Lamoriello thinks that's nuts.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah. Well, another strike against last season being a failure. If you were wondering if the firing of Mike Budenholzer, the guy that got you a title in Milwaukee, was a mistake, you hold on to the guy that replaced him for less than a season.
Tonight, 5 games in the NBA, doubleheader on TNT. The Knicks in Brooklyn, followed by the Lakers and Clippers. ESPN2 tonight has Syracuse hosting Florida State in college basketball.
Okay.
Finally, Anthony Rendon of the Angels. This is a fun fact, and it maybe explains why the Angels suck. He's the 6th highest paid player in baseball today. Well, he's not excited for spring training. Rendon going on a recent podcast saying there are too many dang games in baseball's regular season.
He's right.
It's a take for sure. Weighing in on social media is Jonathan Papelbon. He's always one to share his opinion. The former closer was teammates with Rendon in Washington. Quote, play with Rendon and literally he hates baseball. Yeah, it's long. Isn't that what you signed up for? Just tell the team you want to play half the season and give half your salary back.
Yeah.
Papelbon is once the guy who choked Bryce Harper in the dugout. He's like the fight guy.
Yeah. I love that. I love Papelbon telling the world that Rendon hates baseball. Literally hates baseball. That, when you're work is work, and if you get the opportunity like we do to do a job that you love, I mean, look, it's not always fun for us. The stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't talk about on the air isn't always exciting or sexy or glamorous. It's a lot of fun doing this part of our job, right? Like being able to talk sports here in Rochester for 3 hours every afternoon. We don't take any of that for granted.
If you think Danger and I just show up 3 to 6 and then no. That's true of like anybody or most professions, right? So and in baseball, you play the game, but a lot of work goes into everything.
I just can't imagine having a job where you go in every day and you literally hate the thing that you're doing. I remember going to a sports bar during the football season, and the server just unloaded on us about how much he hates football. And I'm like, well, you're in the wrong line of work. if you're working a sports bar and you're serving everybody that's there to watch football beers at the same time out of the other side of your mouth saying how much you hate the football and you hate the players and you wish the salaries went to a better cause and a more deserving profession. And it's like, yeah, I get all of what you're saying, but you hate your job that much that you're going to project it on to the people that are there while you're doing your job? I can't imagine doing that. I can't imagine if it's true that he hates baseball, doing what he does. Well, I guess if you're the 7th highest paid player in baseball, you kind of swallow your pride and just show up and say yes. Crazy. 6th highest paid, but
6th highest paid, but for kind of a 0.
Interesting. All right, we're going to take a break and come back. It's time for last call. We utter the words, go to the phones, the most dangerous words in all of sports talk radio. That number is 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN if you want to join us for last call. If you've been watching the NFL playoffs from the sidelines, there's still time to get in on the game with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I'm Mike Danger for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. New customers, bet this Sunday's conference championship games with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W, and you can decide if you want to bet on the point spread and either the Niners and Lions game or the Ravens and Chiefs. You can bet the over-under, player props as well. And if you want to follow my picks, go to FanDuel right now. Get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/Mike to join today. That's FanDuel.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
You're listening to the 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Last call in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia. Sure do appreciate you joining us this afternoon and every afternoon from 3 until 6 on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM, AM 950. Our phone number is 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
Luke in Rochester with the Bills take. Hey, Luke, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. There's no reasonable explanation why Pegulo Keith McDermott, a proven loser with a loser's mentality, he's even installing in the players this new mantra that it's hard to win in the NFL. Can you imagine like that? Reed saying that to Mahomes? It's almost like a preemptive strike that he's going to lose. Now, the other thing is he's completely one-dimensional. He's not even good with his forte defensive-wise, but he basically no help whatsoever on the offense, especially at critical times late in games, including this past game, where after the 2-minute warning, where they went for it instead of like trying to get a first down and burn the time out. It's not like Pegula is going to lose any money. It's a full team right now. The full team is the Bills. This is going to rehire him.
I got to cut Luke off. This is why we say for last call the most dangerous words in all of sports talk radio. We go to the phones.
They're losers.
I mean, I don't know, Luke. I don't know if you heard Sean McDermott's press conference. He rattled off his list of accomplishments right off the top. I don't know that those lists.
He didn't go back to high school. He didn't go full Kyler Murray.
No. I will stop short of saying that they're losers with a loser mentality, Luke.
Listen, you can vent.
Listen,
you can
take a shot.
Listen, absolutely. If you're still upset at the team, you want to call them losers. Fine.
Yeah. Tomorrow on the show, PJ Glasser, the host of BetQL's Send It In. Sal Majorana from the DNC stops by as well, and you know Sal will have some things to say. JR Sport Brief next on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening to the Sports Bar.